to sort of give you the more sort of unfiltered version of me, I elected to take absolutely no prescription medication today. Let's see. That's better. It's a nice rug, huh? Oh, I got to do something with this. Okay. Sorry. Someone's got to use the rug. Gather round, my children. Uncle Brian's going to sing you a little song now. Well, moving on up to the east side. I'm just kidding. You put a gun in the story, it has to go off. So I have a mantra that I feel is probably absolutely necessary to share with you right now, a credo, if you will, for those of you who speak that language. It could very well also be a disclaimer, depending on how the rest of this speech goes, but it goes a little bit like this. Whatever I lack in tact, I promise all of you that I will more than make up for with ignorance. And basically what that means is that I fully understand that meaning well and going well are not always the same thing. But I know that I'm a good person. So my job in life is to basically figure out the most responsible way to be accountable for the consequences that my behavior may bring about in the lives of other people. If this were an alcoholic blackout, I would be calling you already and saying, I'm so sorry. Okay. Okay. Well, anyway, so the reason that I can tell you this, though, is it's been a really long trip, all right? Both as a stand-up camelama, which is a lot harder than being a comic. A camelama is way harder. In case you wanted to know. But also in my work now as a social emotional educator, that I've learned essentially my nature, or as I like to call it, and I've heard some other people call it that today, my wiring, which means that I know the things that I wouldn't change for the world. Think of all the things that you like about yourself that you can do. And I know the things that, the many things that I am just not wired to be great at. And I try to handle it with as much grace and humor as possible. Why? It's a good question. Because of the wonderful things he does. Because when you know why in life, it's a lot easier to find the how, if you know what I mean. And this is when the Adderall will start to kick in. Anyway, so what I want to do today, since we're all here learning about genius and insanity in the creative process, is to figure out together ways that you can be more, how shall we say, creative with ourselves, with you. Not necessarily in terms of, if you can draw or sail a boat or work with a double helix, which if you do that, that's great. That's who you are, and, go Guanyin. As a comic, you learn to accept quiet. Like, I could let this go for 10 minutes and it would be so delicious. But I won't do that. I won't do that to you. Yeah, it's about how you can thrive in moments. I happen to be an embarrassaholic. I know that embarrassing moments, which I tend to be immersed in all the time, they're not boring. And my wife, who's sitting in the audience, will tell you that there are many of them. So let's move out of the cosmos, and let's journey to our home planet, Earth. So beautiful. Like a cat's eye. I want you to think about the Earth, right, as the largest floating insane asylum in the universe. Okay? Everybody's crazy. Okay? So if you don't think that you're crazy, don't worry. You are. Okay? And as a friend told me once, that everybody's crazy, Bri. It's just that some of us are lucky enough to have an accurate diagnosis. Now, some of you are laughing. Some of you are sitting there going like, what is he talking about? I'm not freaking crazy. I don't have a diagnosis. And that is indicative of our culture, if you think about it. We are not taught to think about diagnoses in any other way than to just sweep it under the carpet, pretend like it doesn't exist. And I can't afford to do that. I have a very, very positive association to diagnosis. And mainly because for a long time I really didn't. I didn't. Until I had one. So let's zoom in a little more. Let's go to a street now on the Earth, right? Get in like the car in your mind, right? That's Crane Road in Brockton, Massachusetts. That's little Brian Gordon in mind, body, and spirit. Until probably, I would say, 3rd grade. Yeah, probably then. And that's when I guess I started to feel the opposite of Super Brian. I started to get really depressed. I started to get really sad, insecure, socially anxious, which is exactly the same time that people started to tell me that I needed to be more like other people. And in my mind, I knew that I was failing miserably. And I have what they call in the biz, I have a scorching case of ADHD. I can see like the collective brains sort of going, duh. It's fine. I hope that it's coming across to you that I'm totally comfortable with that. I think the thing that upsets me the most about it, though, is I had to wait 35 years to figure it out. And through that time, I had what Edward Hallowell, he's the author of this amazing book called Driven to Distraction, what he calls a secondary diagnosis. And what that means is that for 35 years, my diagnosis of ADHD went undetected. And as a result, a totally other byproduct secondary diagnosis developed where I was experiencing insecurity and the pain of depression, all of those things. Sound familiar to anybody? No? Okay. So what I realized when I figured out that I had this diagnosis is some simple math, right? I realized that pain, once I figured out that I had a diagnosis, is not equal to diagnosis, but actually pain is equal to secondary diagnosis. And that's the thing, right? When you figure out how you're wired, the things that you wouldn't change about yourself for the world, and the things that you would change if you could, what you need to know is that those things are not linked to intelligence or a lack thereof. So I have 2 titles for autobiographies. One of them would be Therapeutic Writhing Techniques, and then the other one would be Undercover Moron. Once you figure out your wiring, it's almost like, it's like when I got my diagnosis, it was like somebody finally gave me an owner's manual, which gave me a head start in knowing all the things that I was going to find really easy and all of the things that I didn't have to take personal anymore that I wasn't good at because it's not linked to intelligence or lack thereof. I'm just not supposed to be good at them. It was amazing. I mean, I'm telling you, like that Super Brian that was up there, like that was me. Like I was jumping off roofs and stuff, and then it was going to school every day, and the only thing I probably felt good about was tying my shoes. And I did that wrong sometimes too. So this leads me to lots of funky dancers that are not a slide anymore in my presentation. This leads me to to the main thing that I want to tell you about today. 2 words that I hope that you take home with you. Those 2 words are functional creativity. All right? Bare bones, when you know your nature, then you know when to nurture. And slowly you learn how to nurture. Functional creativity is essentially playing to your strengths and learning to work with your challenges, the things that, again, you're not so good at. You're being functionally creative every time that you take risks, that you disclose your nature to others, that you believe that you should be in a good relationship and you take the steps to stay in that relationship. It's freedom within parameters, freedom within your wiring. Yeah, that's what it sounds like when somebody's going back to you and then into the teleprompter. I have to tell you what hell it is for somebody with ADHD. I have to tell you this. I have to break the script. I have to tell you, like, first of all, I'm a Jew, so I have the gift of the gab, okay? Then I have a really scorching case of ADHD, which means I have, like, an amazingly colossal, gargantuan penchant for digression, okay? But this is the thing, right? Functional creativity. Before there were hobbies and interests and professions that you have dug into for years or switched to other ones, the first real creative moments that we took as human beings, if you really think about it, is when we began to join the world. When you're a kid, that's what you're doing. And somewhere along the line, when you start to learn all those words and all the things that you're supposed to do as a person, it gets a lot harder, especially if you're really busy thinking that you have to be like somebody else versus being who you are. I mean, that's the gist of it. I mean, 35 years. 35 years. I don't know, some of you would be like, well, I don't know, I'm sitting here and I'm 68 and this is a revelation to me. Time is a very relative thing. What can I tell you? I can tell you that, well, you've got a nice shirt and you've got nice eyes and that's the way that it goes. No, what I want to tell you though is that my work helped me to structure my life the way that I needed to be creative, okay? That I work with a lot of kids that they have IQs that are through the roof. I mean, it's amazing. But they're not really good at associating data that they gather. They don't understand how to problem solve. They overgeneralize. They take the things that they do once and they think that it's always going to be that way. And they also look at a lot of their strengths as weaknesses because every time that they use one of their superpowers, it really causes a lot of misery in their life. It creates a lot of those secondary diagnoses. And it's my job, if I'm doing my job right, is to basically help them to teach me who they are And when I started all this, I didn't know anything. I mean, really. There was a family that wanted me to work with their son who, they told me he had Asperger's because they didn't want to tell me that he had PDD-NOS, which is pervasive developmental delay, not otherwise specified. I didn't even know what Asperger's was. So I basically just spent what I knew how to do, and that was, I'm going to just pretend like there isn't a diagnosis, and I'm just going to work with the person. And it was almost like putting like the cart before the horse. And I realized a few years in that the reason why I was probably doing that is because there was a critical piece that was missing in my life at that point. And that was that I didn't have a diagnosis. And so in my work with them now, one of the biggest qualifications of being able to do a great, great job in my work is that I truly can identify with what my kids are going through. And I guess if I'm going to bring it home, you want me to bring it home? If you want me to bring it home, all right, I'm going to bring it home. If you want me to bring it home, look at it this way, all right? I'm not telling anybody here that you need to run out and get a diagnosis, okay? Some of you have one, some of you don't, okay? However, let's look at it in a broader way. Let's think about your diagnosis, okay, as a person, okay? Not, well, it's your wiring, and then your wiring, if you just kind of bring it in a little bit more, think of your diagnosis as your name, all right? Haven't you ever had something like that happen to you? Haven't you ever seen like someone doing something really weird and you don't know this person, and then somebody who you're with knows that person, and they're like, oh no, don't worry about that. That's just Mitchell. That's what he does. And you're like, oh, okay. So that person doesn't have a diagnosis, but you're definitely filing that behavior under Mitchell. And that's what I'm saying that you need to do for yourself. You need to learn what your name is. Learn everything about your name. Everything that you're good at, everything that you have trouble with, and accept that. Learn to work with it. Be creative about how you do it. Like I said, I mean, to even give this speech today, okay, which I've sort of gone to and abandoned in several different places, but I kind of knew that was going to happen, and I'm okay with it. Because I know how I'm wired. I don't feel bad about it. I know I'm a good person. Again, meaning well, going well, not the same thing. Right? Told you, man. Ignorance is bliss. What I'm saying is you got to figure out what your owner's manual is. You got to be creative about that. Because being like somebody else, well, first of all, it's hard, right? But also, if you don't tell people how you are, they're never going to know how to treat you. And then all of a sudden, if everybody really is accepting who each other is and based on our differences, you begin to truly see why we need each other. I mean, Tamsin, my creative advisor, like God bless her, she is like my ambassador of organization. And I know that she's going to watch this online and be like, you screwed it up. I almost said it. So I guess there are just two more things then. I would just say this, right, is know your name, right? Really like accept your name. And put it on the cover of your owner's manual, right? Build your owner's manual. And understand too that pain in life is just an indefinite period of time until you get the joke. We are a functionally dysfunctional breed, and we were given a sense of humor basically as an involuntary mechanism to stave off a nervous breakdown. We would have died a long time ago as a species if we didn't have a sense of humor. But where we kind of have gone awry with humor is that we don't use it as a form of identification all the time. When you get the joke, you start to identify with other people's pain, and you might laugh sometimes, but it's not because you're laughing at them. You're laughing at something that happened to you. So really, if you think about it, humor in its most purest form, it is identification, not sadism. That's really what it is. It's to help you get through life, or we would have perished with the dinosaurs if we even existed when they existed. So screw you, land of the lost. And I'll basically just end it the way that I would end every stand-up set. And that is that if you spend all your time in life laughing at other people and never at yourself, you don't have a sense of humor. You're a jerk.